Let me tell you about myself. I am an Arsenal fan who loves football, but this is not a story about Arsenal. This is about the FIFA World Cup. You see, I have watched the World Cup games since Brazil won the 2002 World Cup against Germany. If anyone was going to show up for the 2026 World Cup because it's happening in his backyard, it was me. Sadly, I'm watching from my couch this time around, not because I'm tired, not because I got sick or I lost interest in football, but because FIFA has made it so expensive and so unnecessarily stressful that a man who loves football decided it's not worth going to the games. I imagine that a lot of people feel this way. So today, let's talk about how FIFA took what should have been the easiest sell in football history and somehow turned it into a disaster of their own making. Let's just take a second to appreciate what this tournament could have been. The 2026 World Cup is the first ever 48-team edition. I mean, we're getting more teams, more games, more nations represented than any tournament before it. And it's been hosted across the United States, Canada, and Mexico. 16 cities, 104 matches. It kicked off at the Estadio Azteca in Mexico City, probably the most iconic football stadium on the planet. The same place where Maradona did that run, where Pelé lifted the World Cup. And if you wanted to announce to the world that football had finally arrived in North America, you couldn't write a better script for it. The interest was already there. In fact, football viewership in the US has been growing for years. The fan base across the three countries combined is massive. Tickets for this thing should have flown off the shelves like within minutes. Instead, FIFA found a way to make people not want to come to the World Cup. And the frustrating part is, every single problem I'm about to tell you was completely avoidable. So let's start with the most obvious one, and I'm talking about the prices. In Qatar 2022, the cheapest group stage ticket cost $11. $11. I mean, obviously, Qatar had a lot of issues as the host country, and we could do a separate video for that, but at least fans got to see the games. Fans who got there could afford to get into the stadium and watch the game. For 2026, the cheapest group stage ticket started at $100. That's the official face value. On the open market, average prices for group stage games were sitting above $1,000 just 2 months before this tournament kicked off. For some big matches, that was even way higher. And for the final, which is a showpiece event, I mean, it's the reason this whole entire thing exists. The cheapest seats jumped from $206 in Qatar to over $2,000 in 2026. The cheapest seats. And with the initial VIP packages going for as much as $10,990 for a single seat. Now, FIFA's defense of all of this is they're saying we introduced dynamic pricing, which is normal in the North American sports markets. And okay, fine, I get it. Technically, that's actually true. Concert tickets, NFL games, NBA playoffs, those prices, they fluctuate with demand. But here's what makes FIFA's version of dynamic pricing slightly different. They are the only place you can buy official World Cup tickets. There's no competing platform where you can buy these tickets. You can't get them on Ticketmaster. There's literally no other option. It's FIFA's website or nothing. And so when they use dynamic pricing, they're not responding to a competitive market. They're just deciding to charge as much as they can because they can. And then this is the part that really gets to me. This is the part that really stings. They announced a fix, like a goodwill gesture, by saying there will be $60 tickets for every single match. It sounds good in a way, but when you think about it, the number of $60 tickets per game, it's in the hundreds, not in thousands. And for a stadium that hosts as much as 70,000 people, those tickets were limited to the fans of participating countries alone. I mean, that's not a fix. That's more like a band-aid. That's more like a press release. So no real solutions there. Okay, let's say you somehow got a ticket. Now you need to actually get to the stadium. At MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, which hosts the finals, by the way, you can't walk to the stadium. Like, you can't literally walk in there because the roads around the stadium was not built for pedestrians. So your options are limited to these. Your options are limited to mass transit, to ride shares, to chartered buses, or you can park at a nearby mall and pay as much as $225 for parking. And this is where it gets really interesting. When the US, Canada, and Mexico originally bid to host this tournament back in 2018, the host 60 agreement included a promise of free public transportation for all ticket holders to matches. That was the part of the deal. But in 2023, FIFA quietly revised this agreement and free became at cost. So New Jersey Transit, which is the train service that connects New York City to MetLife, they announced that they will charge as much as $150 for a round trip. And that journey should normally cost $13. But after public backlash, they brought it down to around $98, which is roughly 7.5 times more than the normal fare. And it gets worse. Penn Station, which is the main train hub for New York City, partially closes for 4 hours before every match to everyone except for World Cup ticket holders. Now, here's a problem that nobody at FIFA seems to think through at all. And that is the political climate in the United States. It's a big issue. I mean, everybody has been talking about it. Foreign fans traveling to the US right now face a very different environment than they did a few years ago. The immigration enforcement right now is even more aggressive than years before. Stories of travelers being detained have been widely reported, and even a FIFA licensed referee, a referee that should be at the FIFA finals, a referee that should be at this tournament, was denied entry at the border. And for fans of certain nationalities, the anxiety around this is even unreal. 4 nations that competed and qualified for this World Cup, I'm talking Iran, Haiti, Senegal, and the Ivory Coast, they are facing enhanced visa restrictions under current US policy. Their fans can't even just book a flight and show up at the games. Many of them can't even come at all because the policies have changed. And then there's the broader group of international fans who have simply decided that rather than face all of this embarrassment in the US, they would rather go to Canada or to Mexico because they don't want to go through a US border crossing to attend a football match. The risk, it just doesn't feel worth it to them. Now, Iran is a peculiar case. Iran qualified for the World Cup, and Iran has to play some games in the US. But instead of basing themselves in the US, they had to base themselves in Mexico because of the political issues. So let us sink in for a bit. A country that is playing in the World Cup is actively avoiding one of the host nations. This is not the game. So FIFA has chosen to host a global event in a country where a large population of the audience, a large population of the world, do not even feel welcome, do not even feel safe traveling to. So it's either they didn't care enough or did not anticipate these issues and did not put enough measures in place to protect the fans who will be coming to watch these games. And now, to be fair, because we should be fair, right? The problems are not the same across all host nations. Mexico is actually the most affordable part of this tournament. It's actually the most affordable place you can watch the World Cup. Ticket prices in Mexico and in Canada, they are cheaper than the equivalent games in the US. And accommodation in Mexico City and Guadalajara costs 60 to 75% less than comparable US cities. And if you want the most financially World Cup experience, you want the most financially accessible World Cup experience, I would suggest you go to Mexico. But Mexico is not without its issues. I mean, we know the security challenges that Mexico is facing. In fact, just before the World Cup, a military operation targeting a major cartel figure caused significant unrest in Guadalajara. FIFA and fans had to be reassured that the games will proceed safely, and that's not something you want hovering over a major football festival like this. Canada, on the other hand, sits right in the middle. It's more affordable than the US, but the issue with Canada is Toronto's main stadium, which is the BMO Field, is the smallest in the entire tournament, with just under 46,000 seats, and that means less supply, and because of that, prices are going to be high, especially for Canada's own matches, which has a home premium. But the thing that all countries share in common is the simple logistical challenge of a World Cup spread across an entire continent. Think about it. Fans following their teams through multiple rounds might need to travel from New York, LA, Kansas, Toronto, Vancouver, and even Mexico cities. The distance between all of these places are huge. And with flight prices being what they are, adding to the cost of hotels and feeding, all of these things add up. Now, let's bring everything together with the detail that should embarrass FIFA the most. Despite all of this, despite the record prices, the aggressive marketing, the three-country buzz, some matches are already seeing empty seats. And you don't want that at the World Cup. This is the World Cup. You shouldn't be having empty seats at the World Cup. A game in Guadalajara between South Korea and Czech Republic had visibly empty sections. Other group stages have shown gaps in the stand that you just don't expect to see at a World Cup game. Think about what that means. FIFA deployed dynamic pricing specifically to attract maximum revenue from maximum demand. And demand was not even there. The demand they calculated, it just wasn't there because the seats are not even full. So the buzz they thought would happen, the buzz that followed the World Cup, it just didn't translate to sold out seats. That didn't just make the World Cup unaffordable. They didn't just make the World Cup unaffordable. They made it look unloved. And it's ridiculous, honestly. And so for a tournament that's supposed to be the celebration of the most popular sport on the planet, the image of empty seats is frankly surprising, it's frankly damning, and it's self-inflicted. So here's where we land. Here's where things stand at the moment. The 2026 FIFA World Cup was supposed to be a landmark moment. It was the first 48-team edition. We have 3 nations co-hosting. We have the Azteca in Mexico, Magical Stadium. We have 104 matches over 39 days. I mean, it had everything going for it. And FIFA, through a combination of greed, poor planning, and a complete failure to think about the human beings they are supposed to be serving, they spent months generating headlines about price gouging, transport scandals, visa restrictions, and empty stadiums instead of football. So they've basically been in the headlines for the very wrong reasons why they shouldn't even be in the headlines. Now, we have Josh, someone like me, a Toronto resident and a lifetime football fan, who is either going to watch the games from the couch or from a sports bar. But then FIFA will probably still make an enormous amount of money from these tournaments because the TV rights alone would almost guarantee they make a huge amount of money. But what they've lost is harder to measure. What they've lost is the goodwill of the fans who were the most dedicated. They've also lost the trust that the World Cup is still a tournament for the world. And they've also lost the feeling that this was a moment to celebrate rather than to survive. None of it had to happen this way. Honestly, none of this had to happen. And that's the part that hurts me even more.